Hello all my beautiful sisters from those other misters, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing a video on brush washing. Now, one of the most common requests that I get whenever I publish a brush video is, Hayley, how do you wash your brushes? So that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about today. I've actually been planning on filming this video for a long time, and about 2 weeks ago I was sort of like in the groove. I was like, right, I really need to wash my brushes because I'm getting down to the bare bones with my collection. I have so many dirty brushes. I probably got 100 dirty brushes at this point, and I have to wash them all. But I knew that a brand that I love very much was releasing some brush cleaning related products, and I wanted to hold out because I figured there was no point in doing a brush washing video and then reviewing more brush washing things 2 weeks later. So I've got the new goodies from Ella Cosmetics to talk about in this video as well. They have a brush cleaning mat that also comes with like a color switch sponge in the back. You can remove it, but just in case you're wondering. And there's also a solid brush cleanser. But to start this video, I'm going to tell you about the products that I use to actually wash my brushes. So I have a core group of products that I use to wash my brushes. In the end, it comes down to two favorites, which I will get into. But the product that I use is determined by the fibers of the hair, so whether it's a natural hairbrush or a synthetic brush, and the product that's been used on that brush. So if it's like a powder product, or if it's a long wear product like a foundation or concealer, or maybe like a eyebrow pomade or something like that. That is how I determine what I wash my brushes with. So if I have a natural hair brush and I have used it to apply a powder product, my primary cleansing product is from Clean Apothecary. It is their solid brush shampoo. Now, this is the rose one. It comes in a couple of scents. Mine's a bit dirty because, not that you can really tell. Thank you, brightness. So essentially what you do with this is you wet your brush and you swirl it in there, and then you go about your business cleaning your brush. I particularly like this one because it's really gentle on the brush, but it cleans powders effectively, not foundations. And it doesn't leave any residue on the brush. When it comes to cleaning more long wear products, so brushes that I might have used to apply a foundation, a concealer, a liquid liner, something like that, something that needs a bit more heavy duty cleansing to really break down and remove the product from the bristles, that's when I go in with the beloved Daiso Puff and Sponge Cleanser. I have been using this for years and years, and I always come back to this stuff. It is the best cleanser for effectively deep cleaning things like foundation brushes that have gel liner in them, things like that. So they're the two core products that I reach for and repurchase, and they're kind of the king and queen of my cleansing routine, let's say. But there are some other products that I use and I do enjoy. Now, when it comes to natural hairbrushes, this is the Dr. Bronner's liquid soap. Now, I've got the peppermint one here. You can buy it in a massive bottle. It's not expensive. This will last you so long. Now, the thing with this, and the reason why it will never be the king or the queen of the cleansing routine, is because this can leave a greasy residue on your brushes, which won't allow them to dry. It will hold on to product strangely, and it won't apply product well. That residue is also going to go on your skin. Now, I would never use this with a synthetic brush. It's not great because this does contain oils, and a synthetic brush never absorbs anything, doesn't suck anything into the fiber. Brushes 9 times out of 10 will come out greasy after using this if it's a synthetic brush. Now, if you have a natural hairbrush and it is looking really dry and like it's been through the wringer, that's when I like to use this, because the natural hairs can absorb some of that oil. It conditions the hairs. It will make them softer, smoother. That's when this comes into play. But this is definitely not an everyday cleaning product for me. I have 2 products from Sigma. So one is the Sigmagic brush shampoo. This is a liquid cleanser. It's very liquid. It's a lot more runny than the Daiso. I only use this again for powder brushes. I prefer mostly to use this on synthetics because I just really like this guy for my natural hair brushes. It's very gentle. This is no good at removing like foundation, concealer, gel liners, stuff like that. It'll break down some of it, but you're always going to have, like if you've got a foundation brush, it'll sort of be clean around the outside, but then the core of the brush, so right in the center, it just doesn't break down enough product in there. You'll be cleaning over and over again to break everything down. For me, it's not worth it. When I'm cleaning, 30, 40, 50, 100 brushes, I don't have time. I don't want it to be an all-day event. So I only use this on powder products. Another thing, I'm not a massive fan of this pump, and we'll get into why later because I've actually got some footage of it just failing. Something else that I have from Sigma is the Sigmagic scrub. Let's see if I can even open this. Oh, I can. Joyous. So this is like, it doesn't have a screw top. It's got a pull off top, and I find that can be a bit difficult when your hands are wet or slippery. Anyway, essentially what this is, you've got suction cups at the back so you can stick it in your basin, and inside you have a solid soap cake, so something like this guy. And you also have agitating teeth, so they're little like rubberized bristles. They're not too firm. They've got, like, you can push them down. They're quite soft. This is so good for deep cleaning brushes. If you've been using like a powder brush, a blush brush, a bronzer brush for weeks, and it's got a lot of built up product, or maybe don't use a brush for weeks without at least spot cleaning it. But let's just say you do. Sometimes it happens. This is so good for getting in the bristles and really agitating the hairs so that the foam can get up in there, break things down, and clean it well. Again, I would not bother using this for a foundation brush. It can be okay for like getting off excess foundation, but I find I always have to go in with the puff and sponge to get the brush spotless. And for me, I prefer to do 2 cleans with this rather than 2 cleans with this and then have to finish with this in frustration. What I'm really excited about with this product is when I finish the soap cake inside there, I can still keep the product as a cleansing tool, basically. Sort of like one of the cleaning mitts, which we'll get into soon. But I do like this. I like this. I think it's smart, but I only use it for powder products that are on brushes. And to clarify, this and the other Sigma cleanser are gentle enough on natural hair brushes. I just prefer this one. This is the golden child, I suppose. So they are the products that I mostly use to clean my brushes until very recently when 2 new products came into my life. Well, one I've had for a long time and I only just tested it out recently. But the other one that's new, which actually on the day that I'm filming this, released today, but when you're watching this, it released yesterday. This is the Ella Cosmetics Brush Cleaner. So again, this is a solid cleansing cake. There it is. It has a beautiful, almost like nutty coconut-ish scent. It's very subtle, but I really enjoy it. So it's a huge tin of solid brush cleanser. So again, all you do, take a damp brush, swirl it in there, wash your brush, rinse it out. Very effective with powder brushes. Again, really gentle on natural hair brushes, so I can see this getting a lot of use. I had a feel of my natural hair brushes after washing with this to see how they felt, if they were still soft or if they'd had some like moisture sucked out of them. No, I really do think it compares to this, which is great. So these ones I will very happily swap out. I would use these over this for my natural brushes. When it comes to brushes that have like foundation or concealer in them, I didn't find it to be super effective. It took a couple of cleans, and in the end I did go in with the Daiso Puff and Sponge to get a deep cleanse. But I've got to say, and this even goes with the next one that I'm going to talk about, I find that I haven't personally come across a brush cleanser other than the Daiso Puff and Sponge that cleans foundations and concealers and like liquid liners and stuff out of brushes as effectively as this. Like, this is the most effective for me. The next cleanser that I very recently started using is the Hakuhodo Solid Brush Cleanser. Now, I forgot to bring it in the shed, and I'm not going inside again, so I'm going to stick up a picture. So again, this is a solid cleanser. It doesn't come in a tin, it's just a solid cleanser. Maybe the bigger one does. Shall I check? Let's check. No. Okay, it doesn't. It just comes as a solid cake. I've got a mini one, and there are some bigger ones in the range as well, and it comes in 2 shades. It comes in the Vermilion Orange, which is Hakuhodo's signature color, and it also comes in a transparent. That is a beautiful cleanser. I really like it. It's specifically designed for Hakuhodo brushes, which I have a lot of. They are generally a natural hairbrush. Breaks down like powders really well, leaves the brushes beautiful and soft. I do think that in terms of all of these solid cleansers that I have here, the Hakuhodo had it was a bit more robust when it come to trying it with foundation brushes. So that one I'm going to play with a bit more. But look, watch this space. This guy and the Hakuhodo I will talk about in a monthly recap when I am a lot more familiar with it. But for now, those two are a little bit new to me. There is one more product that I use for cleansing. Typically, I don't use it for cleansing brushes. I only use it for cleansing sponges. It is a emulsifying cleansing oil. So the one that I like is for a Muji, but there are plenty on the market. My only stipulation with what makes a good cleansing oil for sponges is that it emulsifies clean, which means it doesn't leave any sort of residue on the skin, which means it's not likely to leave a residue in the sponge. So the reason I use a cleansing oil on sponges is sometimes the foundation gets quite deeply embedded in the sponge, and a standard cleansing product, I always just use the Puff and Sponge. I never bother with anything else because they're just not as effective. Sometimes a cleanser just can't get deep enough to break down the product, whereas the oil can. You can really like get the oil in there and it'll emulsify and break down the foundation and then rinse out clean. Now, I don't usually use this on brushes, and the reason for that is because sometimes the structure of a brush can be compromised by oils. So when you look at a brush, you've got your hairs and you've got your ferrule. Sometimes in the ferrule here, the hairs are glued in, and oils can break down and dissolve some glues over time. So if you accidentally get some oil deep into the ferrule, like if it seeps in here and it comes in contact with the glue, it can dissolve it over time. And you don't want to compromise the structure of your brush because it will break and it'll be unusable. So I just use a really effective cleanser for brushes, and I save the oil for the sponges. All right, let's get into the nitty gritty of how I clean my brushes and sponges. I'm going to start with sponges, and I usually do this once a month. this is when I go in with an oil cleanse. I call it a deep cleaning. And this is when I want to get those sponges spotless, almost looking like new. Now, before every use of the sponge, I wash it with a Daiso puff and sponge. So I've got a clean sponge, I use it to apply makeup, I take it inside. The next day when I want to apply makeup, I wash it so it's ready to go for use. But over the space of about a month, when I've been using a sponge quite regularly, it starts to get built up product that even when you wash it, it looks like you can still see foundation in there, and that's when it needs a deep clean. And I usually do this once a month. So I take my sponges and my cleansing oil. The sponges must be dry. If they are wet, the oil is going to emulsify when it comes in contact with a wet sponge. It's not going to break down anything. So the sponges must be dry. Now, it often takes quite a lot of oil to do this job. So I might use one pump to wash my face and remove my makeup, but often with a sponge, I will use upward of 4 pumps. But I start with 2 pumps in the palm of my hand, and I take the sponge and I sort of press it into the oil. After it's absorbed, 2 more pumps, and then I move on to another area of the sponge that doesn't have oil in it. Then I work the oil into the sponge, and you can kind of tell when it's starting to dissolve the foundation because it looks really sort of smooth and perfect. If there are any patches that haven't been broken down, you'll be able to see them. They're pretty obvious, and I think I've got some footage of that so you can get an idea. So I work the sponges. I work them, I get the oil in there, I make sure all of the foundation is broken down, I take my time and I get the job done. Then I fill up a basin with some lukewarm water. You only need a little bit of water for this. Pop the sponges in, and now what we're trying to do is break down the oil. So emulsify it really well. You really, really, really want to work these sponges. You can push them into the bottom of the basin with the palm of your hand and let them suck up more water. You can do that over and over and over. That will really help to break down the oil and expel the oil. I do this rinsing process twice because on the first go, you're going to end up with filthy water, and it's going to be a combination of foundation, concealer, powder if you bake, and emulsified oil. It's not it's gross. I do this process twice, and I always find with the second, let out the water, fill up the basin with a little bit of lukewarm water again. I find with the second cleanse, there is still product coming out of those brushes. There's still emulsified oil. So I also always do that sort of emulsifying and rinsing process twice. Then I take my puff and sponge with clean water and I foam them up. If your sponge is not foaming at all, if you're getting 0 foam, then you know you still have oil in that sponge and your cleanser is struggling to break it down. So you might need to do this process a couple of times depending on whether your oil leaves a residue or not, which I would really recommend not using with sponges because getting it out and getting them properly clean can be really difficult. So I highly recommend a really good emulsifying oil. It doesn't have to be expensive or top of the line. The Muji one is fairly affordable, but the way that it washes away is very clean and it's easy to get out of the sponges. Then I do my final rinse with some clean running water. If you have done a really good job of cleaning the sponge, this won't take long at all. It's just a matter of making sure there are no suds left in the sponge and they will be spotless. Let's get into brushes. So first thing I do before I clean any of my brushes is I divide my brushes into 3 groups. I take my synthetics and my naturals. They go into their own groups. And then I take any brush that I have used, like a liquid, a cream, or a long wear product on. So things like foundation, concealer, cream brush or bronzer, cream blush or bronzer. Is that what I said? I don't think it was. Anyway, and also things like brow pomades, liquid liners, stuff like that. Anything that's gonna take a lot more work to break down and could potentially be like sort of built in and caked onto the fibers, they go into their own pile. Whether it's a natural hairbrush or a synthetic brush, it doesn't matter. I just know that those brushes are going to need more heavy duty cleaning. I take a cleansing mat. Now I have the one that I'm using in this video. It was just a cheapie that I brought at, I think it's Salon Melbourne maybe, or now it's called Beauty Expo. I don't know, whatever. It was just from like a little like trade store. I also have one from Sigma, which is really good. Essentially these they've got suction cups on the bottom of them and they stick into your basin. I fill the basin with lukewarm water just up to the edge of the cleaning mat, and that is just so I've got something that I can dip my brushes in and give them a little rinse. Now, for the sake of this video, I didn't fill up the basin very much. So the water got very dirty very quickly. If I'm doing a large amount of brushes, I will fill the basin up a lot more and I'll bring that mat higher up on the basin edge. When the water is really, really dirty, it makes cleaning the brushes more difficult. So you're going to have to swap this out depending on how many brushes you're doing. So I take my brush, I dip it into the water and I squeeze out just a little bit of the excess so that the water doesn't dilute your cleanser. I tried to demonstrate the Sigma liquid cleanser in this, and the bottle that I had open, I couldn't get the pump to work. It was like it was locked, but I couldn't, no matter what I did, I couldn't get it to unlock. So I gave up on that. So I just did the general cleaning process to show you the method that I use with the Daiso. So I take a tiny bit of Daiso and I work it into the brush. If it's a brush that's had powder on it, I just work it on my hand. It's quite easy. If it's really built up, sometimes I have to go into the mitt just to break things down. Or if I'm like 2 hours deep in a cleaning session and my hands are killing me, I'll go straight into the mat to help break down the product. Then I dip the brush in the water, give it a little rinse, and I set it aside for a final rinse a bit later on. If you decide to try this method out, make sure that you squeeze out all of the excess water from that brush. You don't want a sopping wet brush sitting on the side of your basin for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe longer, absorbing water down into that ferrule. You want to get all of that water out if you can. I had another bottle of the Sigma liquid cleanser that was brand new and I really wanted to demonstrate it, so I tried to open that one and it unlocked, but I couldn't get the damn pump to pump product out. In the end, I gave up on that and I just tipped some into my palm. I use the same process as I do with the Daiso, and I do with all the brushes. I either work the product into my hand or on the mat, depending on if the product is really built in or if my hands are sore. Just whatever works for me at that specific time. The Sigma cleanser, like I said, very good for powders, not great for long wear products. So that one only gets the tick of approval for powders from me. I wanted to demonstrate the Sigmagic cleanser. So again, wet the brush, squeeze off the excess, work it into the soap. The little teeth are great for getting in there and cleaning the brush and like agitating things while it's picking up some of the soap. I particularly like to use that when I've got a really dirty eyeshadow brush or a really dirty face powder brush. For my natural hairbrushes that have had powder on them, the process that I use is exactly the same. Get the hairs wet, squeeze out excess water, pick up some of the cleanser by swirling the brush in there, and then either, swirl it on my hand to foam it up and break down the product, or use it on the mat if I feel necessary. Then rinse the brush, squeeze out as much water as you possibly can, set it aside for a final rinse. When it comes to liquids, creams, and long wear products, I usually just go straight in with the Daiso cleanser. The goal here is to not spend 3 years trying to clean product out of the center of the brushes. If it's a synthetic brush, it's Daiso all the way. There's no second thoughts about it. I always go in with the Daiso. Sometimes it does require 2 cleans. So the first one to sort of get in there and start to break up the product. The Daiso Puff and Sponge Cleaner, when you put it into a really dirty brush, it won't even foam. Essentially what it's doing is working at breaking down that foundation, and then I give it a rinse to get the excess product out. And then I go in with a second cleanse to do the final clean of the brush. That will get out any leftover product. It'll foam up really nicely. That's when I know the brush is clean. It's ready to be rinsed and set aside for a final clean rinse. When it comes to a natural hairbrush, I still use the Daiso, but I am much more careful. Now I do have some foundations and concealers and stuff like that, which will break down fairly well with the clean Apothecary shampoo. So sometimes I will use that just to break down the excess product in the brush. And then I go in with the tiniest amount of the Daiso cleanser just to get a light foam and to break down any excess product before I rinse, squeeze it out and put it aside for a final rinse. There are some foundations that I have that hold on to natural hairbrushes for dear life, and that is when I will do the double cleanse with the Daiso Puff and Sponge. I use a very, very small amount of product and I'm extremely gentle with the brushes. I usually always try to clean them just on my hand first. I try not to use the mat unless I can see that there is product that is simply not being broken down and it needs something to agitate inside the center of the brush. Final step is a freshwater rinse. Now you can totally do this in a basin of fresh water if you want. If I am doing small brushes like eyeshadow brushes, I'll actually grab like 3 or 4 and do them all at once. Then I take a clean dry cloth and I squeeze out as much excess water as I possibly can from the brushes, and I reshape the hairs and I put them on a clean dry cloth to dry. I lay mine down and sometimes I do use a brush guard. Depending on the hairs, usually natural hair brushes is where my brush guards come into play, and it is just to keep their shape as it was originally intended. Then I've got some demos of the new Ella Cosmetics and Hakuhodo products that I wanted to play with. So the Hakuhodo solid cleanser, it was just a mini. I bought it last year. Like I think it's been over a year and I never used it. So I figured I'd give it a try. I used it on a powder brush and a foundation brush, and powder brush, perfect. Absolute, like immaculate, perfect, beautiful. The foundation, it did work really well. Like I said earlier, watch this space. I need to play with it a bit more to have like a really solid feeling about it, and yeah, give solid opinions. However, it's really nice. I like it. I think they've done a good job with it. Getting into the demos of the new Ella Cosmetics products. So there is a solid cleanser and the brush mat. Now, the mat has a sponge in the back, and that sponge is like a color switch, which is great. I used it today when I was filming this look. I only used one brush to apply the color. I used a couple others to blend, but gorgeous. Works really well. I was really impressed. Did you guys know it's actually the first time I've used a sponge like this for switching between colors while applying my makeup? Usually I just use multiple brushes. It's a thing. But it worked really well and I like it. It is in the shape of a cloud, which is very cute, and your sponge fits perfectly in the back of the cleansing mitt. Now, the mitt is, or the mat, it's not a mitt. A mitt is something that goes on your hand. A mat is not that. So it's got different textures on the mat. This one is very, very similar to the one that I used in the video in terms of like the textures that it has on the mat. Now, the only difference being is that my green mat has the names of what each texture should be used for, and the Ella Cosmetics doesn't. But the general rule of thumb is big brushes, you want to use the bigger textures, and smaller brushes, you want to use the smaller textures. There are also these sort of lined textures, so the bigger ones are good for rinsing big brushes, smaller ones good for rinsing smaller brushes. So you've got like a clean, 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 and these are all rinse. Down here, really good for like sort of medium-sized eyeshadow brushes, highlight brushes, stuff like that. Down here, detailing or small eyeshadow brushes, and yeah, same with the wavy things. Because this mat doesn't have the suction pads on the back of it, it moves around in the sink. You'd be much better off sitting it on a flat surface to use it. So you do lose out on that functionality because it has the sponge, but you also have the sponge. So you're missing out on one thing but gaining something else in its place. So you just have to decide if that is something that you want. If you have like one of those really cool flat basins that has like that waterfall effect where the water goes into like a drain at the back of it or even in the center, something like this would be fine for you. Like it would probably work even better than the flat mats, because, or the ones that like stick onto your basin, because you can stick it or sit it on your basin, do your cleansing, and then when you need to rinse the mat, you just pick it up and rinse it under the tap. Whereas the ones with the suction pads, if that's stuck on, you've got to sort of pull it off, and if it's filthy, you could potentially be splattering dirty soap suds around your bathroom. The solid cleanser effectively cleans powder brushes. I really liked the way it foamed up in the brush. It wasn't like a really bubbly foam. It's kind of rich and like a soft but rich lather. It really, really nice. I really like that. For foundation brushes, it just didn't quite hit the mark. It didn't get in there. I'm sure, you know, I could have done multiple cleans with it. I think I did 2. And then I picked up the Daiso Puff and Sponge because I don't want the cleansing process to take forever. I do feel like I have to mention the price of the Ella products. I think they're a bit expensive for what they are. The brush cleaner, while it's huge, it's 150 grams, but it's $40. It's 40 Australian dollars. I do think it's a bit expensive. The mat is $50. So this guy with the sponge is $50, and I think it's a bit expensive. I don't know what it cost. Like, this is a custom shape. I don't know what it costs to make these types of things, but I do worry that that price tag could turn some people off trying them. But look, I love Ella. I love Ella, and I am grateful that they sent them to me, but I also have to tell you guys, they're expensive. There are a couple of things that I want to touch on before I wrap this video up. I suspect people might ask about, what do I do when my brush is staining from like products? It's very common, especially if you're using a natural hairbrush, because they will hold on to pigment and sometimes they can stain. I personally don't do anything. I just wash my brush. If it's stained, it's stained. You can use a purple shampoo if you're finding that your natural white hairbrushes are looking a bit yellow, but you want to be really, really careful because the shampoos will strip the brush. It will dry the hairs out. So you want to be really mindful of that. Personally, I don't care if my brushes are a bit stained or a little bit like the bristles are yellowing. I don't care. The integrity and the health of the brush is more important to me. Some really common cleaning products that people use for their brushes are things like shampoo, face wash that they don't enjoy, baby shampoo, that's a really, really popular one, and even bars of soap. And that's fine. If it works for you, do what you love. Use them. Use your products. I do occasionally use face washes or body washes that I don't like using on my actual face or body to clean my synthetic brushes, and it's fine. And when it comes to drying brushes, like I said, I like to lay mine flat and let them dry, just air dry. Some people like to rig up crazy fun things where they've got their brushes sort of hanging down so they can dry upside down. Some people even have the brush trees. That's fine. I've got a brush tree as well. Actually, no, I think I got rid of it because I never used it. But you can do that if you want. That's fine. Laying your brushes flat to dry them is perfectly fine. You just need to make sure that you get out as much excess water as you can so that the water isn't seeping down the hairs into the ferrule and potentially breaking down the glue in there. But as long as you get out the excess water, you won't have any issues. I think that's everything. I'm probably forgetting something. I usually do. So feel free to ask any questions or just leave your comments about how you clean your brushes, products you use that you love, or methods or tools, whatever. Comment section. Go for it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.